أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أم حسبت أن أصحاب الكهف والرقيم كانوا من آياتنا عجبا إذ أوى الفتية إلى الكهف فقالوا ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا فضربنا على آذانهم في الكهف سنين عددا ثم بعثناهم لنعلم أي الحزبين أحصى لما لبثوا أمدا نحن نقص عليك نبأهم بالحق إنهم فتية آمنوا بربهم وزدناهم هدى.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Aquib. Welcome you back to another episode of Boys in the Cave. This podcast is proudly sponsored by Night Watchman Sports, our friendly neighborhood cricket bat supplier. I'm joined by Tanzim. What's good, bro?
How's it going, man?
Alhamdulillah, bro. Doing good. And
That's
alhamdulillah, we have a special guest with us, Mazen Kourouche, to discuss entrepreneurship. So Mazen is an experienced iOS app developer. He's the founder of Decoda Apps and is a pretty famous YouTube content creator. You may have seen the articles posted around. He's the guy that was camping at George Street for 10 days to be the first person to purchase the iPhone 8. So Mazen, welcome.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
It was funny, so we have a few mutual friends. So I know you as that guy who lined up and I knew you before you had these apps and stuff, but then after it's that guy. Yeah,
I think
good.
a lot of people say that now. It's like if that's the guy that lined up. It's like,
Do people forget the fact that you actually make apps and just think of you as that guy? Or
I mean, it's not too bad as long as they know me as some guy at the start. Then we can kind of shift that. So
that's pretty cool. That's good. Apparently, you initially wanted to line up for the iPhone X.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and then you found out. When did you find out that they weren't releasing it until later?
I lined up, I think, 2 days before the announcement.
Yeah.
And then 2 days later, they told me. Well, they didn't tell me. They announced it. It was meant to be released on the same day, but then they announced them on 2 separate days. So I was lining up for the 8 instead of the 10.
Did you find out why?
No,
they changed.
I would see it as just a marketing strategy because right after that, probably a few weeks later, Google released their phone, and then so I think just to jump on that and then cut the fame that they were getting for the Pixel, they released another phone to make sure that they keep that longer period.
Explain to non-tech heads like me. I don't know what's happening, but why did they release, the iPhone 8 and the X around the same time? Like for me, wouldn't it be, you just release one and wait till the next 5 years or whatever it
They actually didn't. It was it's the iPhone 10, right? Yeah, so we always say the iPhone X, but the iPhone 10 is going to be released about early November, so that's why.
The X is the Roman numerals. Okay, good, sweet.
So they swapped the release date or delayed it. That's all.
The biggest question is why there isn't a 9 in between. It's just 8 and 10.
There's no Windows 9 either.
No,
it's like Windows 8 and
I don't know if it's
what's up with that? It's like
I don't know.
Superstition.
Just stay away from 9. No, but for them, it was an 8, like keeping up with the numbers. But then it's their 10th anniversary of their iPhone, so then they just brought in the 10. So.
Yeah. Okay. There's so much. I wonder, if they sit around a round table discussing this kind of stuff. So is it 8? Should it be 10? It's like
make it X.
And taking away from the all iPhone experience, we'll probably talk about that a bit later. But what you do, people want to know what's your kind of, you're kind of building a brand, right? Because I saw your YouTube content.
It's pretty good stuff,
it's pretty lit, the content, it's proper legit.
It's legitimate,
stuff. Yeah. It's not just some, with me, it's funny. Don't actually go on, I'm promoting myself. Night Watchman Sports. Yeah, we full filmed it on a phone and got it out there. So it's your one is this looks like the real deal. You know
after this podcast, that's what I want to look at first.
But you have that. And then you're building apps and, you have that experience that you went to America and we'll probably touch on that in detail a bit later. But what made you kind of, start that whole experience of doing what you do, I guess? What was that kicker,
It was more of a creative mind at a younger age. So for me, it was, I think, probably around year 3-ish, so pretty early years, I started to find the creativity that I was focusing on. I focused a lot on academics, but I think that was just common in normal household.
Yeah, like
Muslim,
any ethnic,
second
household,
gen.
yeah. But then there was like that little extra bit that I would do what I had to do when it came to academics, but I would, in my spare time, do something else that would just create something new. When I first found out about like Microsoft and PowerPoint, that was my first creative space. And I would create PowerPoints, but I wouldn't focus on the slides. I would focus more on the animations and making like stop motion animations just using PowerPoint.
Yeah.
I didn't know any other software at that time, and it was the free thing that was installed on our computers. Anytime like I would learn something new, I would go on YouTube and I would look up new things. Then my parents noticed that, and so they enrolled me in like it was more of a science and technology class on the weekends.
Yeah.
And they just taught new things every term. So I started off with like rocket science, and then they had some other classes. I think the main one that got me into where I'm at now was robotics. There's something called Lego Mindstorm. It exists now, a lot more advanced than when I used it back in year 3, 4, 5. But you build Lego pieces, you build a robot out of Lego, you plug it into a computer, and you would just like have a moving object after you programmed it, and you could make it do things like spin, detect colors, and things like that. For me, that was fascinating.
That's awesome, man.
Especially to think about years back. This is maybe like 10 years ago. Things like that were not easily accessible to the normal public, but now we've got it in our pockets on smartphones, and that's what kind of why I moved over to iOS applications. I saw like now it's a widespread thing. Everyone's going to have a phone soon. Back when I started, and so I just jumped on that.
So do you feel like all the stuff, the creative stuff that you do in the robotics and playing around with the PowerPoints, do you think that played a role in your creativity today? Do you reckon?
Yeah, definitely. It's mainly because it was there. And then I acted on that to bring it forward. Like if I left it to sit around and just die down, I probably wouldn't have been where I am now. I would have gone more into the academia space or something like that.
So I guess your parents are open-minded in the sense that they saw something in you where they just kind of pursue like, okay, let me do that thing. So I guess, alhamdulillah, in a sense that your parents facilitated your creativity in a certain direction, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. That I think is the biggest thing that I would attribute all of that to that move that they made to kind of pick that up, notice that I had that creativity, and then put me into a class that I think brought that out. Because, I mean, if you have a skill or a talent, I don't think it should be like put down for something else that someone else sees as more glorified, which is like academics.
I feel like with me, because I do tutoring on the side and I also run a small business, what I found, me from my experiences, people are so different. People can't, don't have that, I guess, level to understand the mathematics that some people might, or like have that creative mind compared to others. And, I feel like parents, in the sense, I'm not roasting parents here, but just letting them know that some of them, kind of have that strict mentality of going towards only one direction in life, where you gotta kind of be open-minded and let your kids do what they do in a younger age.
It's a bit difficult because I work at a tutor, like my part-time job is I work at a tutoring center. Yeah. So I get a lot of parents coming up to me and saying, oh, my child doesn't want to do this. He actually wants to do computer science and things like, and it's like, they don't know what I do. And so,
really?
And it's like, look, my son, he's like spending so much time on the computer and he's like making other things, but he's not focusing on his studies. And like in my head, I'm just like, I mean, let him do that. But you kind of like, when you got to pitch it, when you're pitching it to them, it can't be like, no, forget about studies completely. Because I also think that's important as well. Like if I didn't have that educational background, I also wouldn't be where I'm at the moment. Because it's very important. Knowing what I'm doing isn't just I do computer science and I focus on that. I still have a lot of like mathematics and science and that kind of knowledge that backs everything that I'm doing.
Yeah, you need that kind of, I guess with computer science and all that, you need to have that kind of level of intellect as well to go back up with it. You can't just pursue something like, would you say that you'd also need kind of a backup education degree as for what you're doing? For example, I'd say in a general sense from my kind of sporting, what I've read and learned, like there are famous cricket players that actually do law on the side, for example. Do you think you should have like a backup thing for what you're doing? Because you are like an entrepreneur, but you're also studying. Do you think you need that degree to help you out, or are you doing it for just a backup?
Personally, I'm not of that mindset. Like, I don't think you need a backup. But I do think that education is a fundamental. It's not a backup. Like, you kind of need it for everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Having a degree as a backup, I personally wouldn't be pursuing my degree right now if it wasn't for my parents. Yeah, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that there's this massive misconception, and we're going to delve into like misconceptions of entrepreneurship later in this episode. But I want to start off by saying this idea that he's been, you know, a lot of these people like Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, they started this phenomena like people dropping out of college, dropping out of university to pursue their
but like
brand.
they dropped out of Harvard.
But that's
exactly.
what people don't realize, that they could have easily gone back if their ideas didn't pan out the way they did. They could easily just re-enrolled and completed their degree.
That's a big thing. I mean, so for a long period of time, I was trying to convince my parents to let me drop out of uni. I actually was.
Yo, how much beating did you get, bro?
I'm still going at it, but like now I've it's kind of died down, mainly because I've only got a year left.
Yeah.
And so now I see it as pointless. But in early stages, I wanted to, and I still wish I did. But there's that misconception that you're talking about. When my parents hit me up with that, and I spoke to them, and I was like, you know what? If I drop out, I think I would have so much more potential in, you know, doing what I want to do. And they're like, but so many people drop out, and look at them, like they end up nowhere.
And you know why? It's because of the environment. Like all the jobs that are high paying and very demanding, and they expect you to have a degree level education.
Well, that's shifting at the moment, but just going back to that point specifically, like when I was speaking to my parents, and they were like, but so many people drop out and they end up nowhere. It's not about the act of dropping out. It's about your mentality when you drop out.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And so for me, like when I planned to drop out, I said, I want to drop out and I want to work 10 hours a day on everything that I'm doing. Like I want to be making videos and I want to get up at 7 a.m. and sleep at 11, recording and editing videos, uploading them, working on my personal brand, things like that.
Sure.
But then people drop out because they either want to pick up like a small job on the side because they're lazy, or they just think, oh, I don't need uni. Like so many people, like they look at that example.
That's right.
He dropped out and then it's going to come to me. No, but like that mentality, which is why I wanted to, is because I saw what I was going to do if I did drop out. And you got to think of that.
So you've already envisioned yourself. You've already laid down a plan for yourself and how things are gonna eventuate, like a year to year plan. And then you were like thinking, okay, so I'm going to tell my parents I'm going to drop out because of that plan. I feel like in my mind this is going to work. Yeah. It's not like a pipe dream or anything like that.
No. Like of course, to some extent, I've set out a plan of like inshallah what would happen if I did all of this. I've looked at other entrepreneurs and
such as
so one of my favorite ones is Gary Vaynerchuk.
Oh, okay, yeah. Big
so
social media.
The Gary is it Gary?
Yeah,
Media?
Gary V.
Yeah. I think he has a media.
Gary V, yeah,
VaynerMedia. Yeah.
VaynerMedia, that's it. Yeah.
He's kind of who I look up to in terms of business strategy, and the way he developed his business, and what he does at the moment, like the way he keeps up with personal brand and things like that. But he talks about the hustle so much, and that he puts that as the main focus.
Right.
And it's not necessarily that needs to be your way through entrepreneurship, but that's almost the most certain way. It's the most difficult way, but it's the most guaranteed way. It's
funny how we talked about the mentality when you drop out. It's, you know, all those picture quotes on Facebook and Instagram. They always, you know how they talk about Isaac Newton dropped out. Yeah. He dropped out. It's not like he just did whatever. He actually discovered the laws of gravity. It's because he was too smart for uni. That's why he dropped out. Yeah. It isn't the fact that I'm struggling with it, I'm going to drop out, suddenly something's going to click later and I become a genius, right? These people, and you see all these kind of lazy people sharing these kind of stuff. Like, it's so funny. It just makes me like lol hard. You know what I mean?
Like Gary Vee got D's and F's in his school time. Even I don't know if you guys know Casey Neistat. He's a massive vlogger.
Okay.
Well, he had a really tough upbringing because like he was very rebellious at a young age, but he was getting D's and F's in school. And I watched one of his speeches recently, and the biggest focus for him was his hustle in something that he wanted to do.
Okay.
It wasn't so much that he was not smart.
Exactly, yeah.
Like he was intelligent. He knew what he was doing at school, but he just didn't enjoy it. Like that's not where he wanted to go. It's not what he wanted to do. And as soon as he left, he got a part-time job. And he was like, I was washing dishes at a restaurant.
Sure.
But I can tell you that I was the best dishwasher in the state. Like, you could be like the best at whatever it is, but you got to be focusing.
You know what the common denominator I find is? They work really hard.
They do.
They work really hard to compensate for the time that they forewent in, pursuing, education, formal education. But they went in and worked hard to get street level education.
Yeah. Like one of his recent tweets was, I get up at 4 a.m. and work until 12.
Yeah.
So like, I couldn't do that. And so many people can't. But that's his strategy. But if you look at it, he's hustling like crazy. And he knows what he's going to get out of it, but he chose that life. He knew what he needed to do.
For this episode, we wanted to kind of discuss this. We've already delved into it, but I want to kind of get the spirit of entrepreneurship towards the Muslims because, it isn't feasible, of course, to, work from 4 a.m. to 12 a.m.
Of course, yeah.
But we definitely want to capture that spirit, and we want to kind of clarify misconceptions that are being put out there by the media, by people that are, unsuccessful. And, the Maz, we want to explore a more realistic outlook on, what it's like being an entrepreneur and being part of this startup scene, what it's like.
So there's two sides or two views on it. There's one that you just mentioned where a lot of people, they try entrepreneurship and then they fail and they send out that negative stigma. And then there's also the other side, that people that see all of the, the big people out there.
Yeah.
They don't see what happens behind closed doors and how quickly they get into it.
Right.
And so they just think it just came out of nowhere. And so they send out a positive stigma. I want to do entrepreneurship. It's easy money, easy success, things like that.
That's it, man.
So there's kind of two sides to it, and it's a bit of a middle ground. And so when it comes to entrepreneurship, I think for me, the way I see it, it depends on the person.
Okay.
It's not for everyone, but it's similar to the way that you might see, like, medicine is not for everyone, engineering is not for everyone. I kind of see it as a job. It's just another course, another degree, sort of, but it's just another space. And it just depends on what kind of life you plan to live. That's how I see it, really. If you want to be following a very strict, you like to be on task and on point with exactly what you're doing, then a degree is very feasible. Like when my parents talk to me about
security, if you want security, for example.
Yeah, when my parents are talking about it and they tell me, degrees like a certain, I agree with that. And it's an easy path, not an easy, sorry, it's a guaranteed path.
Straightforward.
That's probably the better way to put it. You just follow this, you do the subjects, you graduate, then you find a job, and then...
And you promote up the ranks.
Yeah, and you go up the ranks. So it kind of goes that way. But whereas if you're in for a potentially better lifestyle at the risk of it not working, and also at the risk of putting in a lot more effort, and then the uncertainty, then you would go down the entrepreneurial route. And there's a lot of people, like you would think that that's not a route people want to take, but it's the route that I want to take. It's a route that a lot of people want to take.
Yeah.
Mainly because the way I see it is it puts you in a position that lets you live your life to the fullest. Though you can with every other scenario, like, any degree that you do, you could. But for me, I just wanted that freedom.
Yeah,
but then,
okay.
Yeah, when I started it though, I saw it as I had that positive mentality. It's just easy. It's going to be like an easy road, and then you're going to become a massive.
I'm just going to collaborate with a bunch of friends. We're going to be. It's going to be awesome. We're going to be
late night.
That's what I thought. And then
set up a garage in about 3 years' time. We're going to be hitting Silicon Valley.
Exactly. Yeah. That's how I saw it when I was working in the app space, and then when I went to the YouTube space, I saw like people like PewDiePie on like 40 million.
Bro, how does he get that much?
I don't know. Which is why I was like, do anything and you become big. So I jumped on that, and then I noticed that it wasn't as quick success as I thought.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I actually stopped YouTube for a period of time, a long period. Same with app development. I started trying to learn app development. I thought it was going to be easy, and then I stopped that over and over and over.
Yeah.
So like I stopped app development many times before I decided I'm going to go into it, and I'm going to take that risk. I'm actually going to because I want to do it.
Tanzim, I want to ask you, why do you bother being an entrepreneur?
With me, I think we can touch about it later. I think we had a chat about passion.
Yeah.
And so about entrepreneurship, it's not for everyone, but I feel like with me, if you have an interest in something in particular and you want to pursue that, then if there's scope for that, then go for it.
Yeah.
So with me, getting into the whole cricket business, that was a passion that I had, in the sense that I know in the market there's a gap that I can kind of fill. There's a lot of potential, and I had connections to certain people. I was currently in the midst of just sponsoring a grade level player, so it's kind of like a big deal. He plays around the world and stuff like that. And so having all these things in our mind, I'm like, hey, since I have something already passionate and I know the scope, might as well pursue it. So those are kind of the reasons. If I see something that I like, and as I said, there's also that element of freedom as well. Yeah. And I feel like, especially, we touched this on episode 1, where, with the whole work life, it's always, as much as we talked about, you mentioned it was a straightforward path, but there's also many issues, variables you can't control, especially us being Muslims in the West.
Yeah, of course.
Work life. I don't know, there's probably like party life after that.
Even securing opportunities. Like, you're seeing people go out of the way to change their first names to more Anglo names.
Exactly.
To get these opportunities.
You're changing yourself for someone that you don't know why you're doing. You're just doing it for the sake of doing it. And I feel like adding all these kind of things up, entrepreneurship, that's something that I'm really kind of into. And inshallah, it goes somewhere. So yeah, that's kind of my reasons of doing it.
I actually believe that the entire population has the potential to be an entrepreneur. I believe that.
Exactly. I do. But It's the mentality.
Now, that's one of the elements.
It comes down to that.
I feel like it's also they don't have the passion for what kind of idea they want to pursue particularly.
No, but like you had an idea, right? You were passionate about like sport. Was it sport or cricket or anything, something like that? But you were passionate about that, and like when it comes down to entrepreneurship, I think the main idea around it is monetizing your strengths and monetizing your passions, because entrepreneurship, being an entrepreneur, is essentially selling a product or a service or something like that, and it's your way of making a living. And the best way, obviously, they see it as living your life to the fullest, because you're doing what you want to do every day, but then you're earning money for it. And so for you, you're in the field of cricket, something that you enjoy, and then you're getting paid for it. And so anyone can do that. If I enjoy cooking, I can turn that into a business, and then I've become an entrepreneur. But then being able to sustain that and then put up with what comes with it, you kind of need to know that and expect it. Otherwise, that'll bring down the whole business and your thoughts of entrepreneurship with it.
And it's funny, it's how we, because three guys here were talking about what guys are more into. You know what I mean? And I think even for girls, like there's girls that start up businesses about something they're passionate about, and it comes really like Mehdi, the thing they put on their hand. Yeah, henna, that's it. And so all these kind of things, there's a lot of girls who are into doing the makeup, the henna, and they're really passionate about it. And you see them on social media, and they're doing it, and they're actually making killing because everyone's going to them. And there's little ways you can find stuff that you're passionate about and make it into a business idea and get people on board, regardless of gender. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it comes back to potential and putting the hustle, and if you're willing to work for it. You know what I mean?
But also something like that, you can do. You can do it on the side. You can do something on the side. For that, it's not so much of I need to get big, I need to get up in the ranks and also be recognized, because that requires the hustle. Getting a lot of customers and things like that requires that. But there's two scenarios. First of all, if you already have the market and people want it, a lot of people in your community want something, and then you can bring it to them and have a really easy way, like promote it in your local musalla or something like that, where everyone will use it. That's very simple, and it doesn't require too much hustle. But someone that wants to do it full time and just wants that to be what they want to do, then you got to expect that you got to put a lot of work into it.
That the second example is what I'm leaning towards in when I imagine entrepreneurship pursuits. That you have to have certain elements that are ticked off. Like you got to have passion, you got to have an idea, you got to have the right people around you, and you got to have the right venture. I feel like those are the things you need to tick off. And I want to reflect on my experience with Genesis. The entire process was really smooth because we found a niche where people are struggling to get software solutions, business technology solutions. They wanted more the customer experience with the solutions that they're experiencing. It was similar to how, when, for example, you go to tech support and you have this problem, right? Mm-hmm. But then you get this really awesome kind of support service with the solutions that your problem's being solved, right? So we want to come to capture that impression as well, but on a larger scale. Like we want to have the customers enjoy products that take about 10 to 12 weeks to kind of get to the minimal viable product stage. Yeah. But at the same time, we want them to absorb and enjoy the experience along the way. So that builds loyalty to our brand and also allows them to kind of imagine themselves being entrepreneurs for a little while as well, to kind of get a taste of what it's really like, get a buzz, get that energy, get that hype. Those elements need to be ticked off. Yeah. And then you can be a successful entrepreneur. I
think probably towards the end of the episode, I'll actually go through what I think are the main requirements.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then so like maybe we can end the episode on that. But then, but yeah.
But in terms of attitude, I feel like that needs to be processed as well. Like it's going to be hard. You got
definitely. You need to know that. It's more about. I mean, it being hard is not a problem. It's expecting it to be hard.
Yeah. Okay.
Because when you go in there thinking that it's going to be, so easy and simple, it's that backfire when you walk in there and then you end up failing a few times. Some people don't even get past the first failure because they expect it to be a success from the start. It's that expectation that puts them down, and then they're crippled by that failure, and then they stop.
That is pretty accurate. Yeah.
But do you feel that people kind of expecting the result is the reason why they stop? Or because we only hear the good stories, you hear about Gary, you already hear they hustle. But do you feel like they've a lot of stories where they've really, really hustled and they didn't make it? Do you think that is prevalent and we just don't hear about it, or it's?
I just don't think people see it. Like people don't see those negative, the bad stories or the failures. People don't see that much, except when someone succeeds after it. Like when someone's failed and then they've succeeded, that's the only time you see their failure.
Like a comeback story.
Yeah, that's the only time their story becomes a big thing. Like this guy's lost his parents at a young age, and then he had to live on his own, and then dropped out of high school, but then he became a millionaire at the end of that. Yeah. Everyone just focuses on that. He had a hard life, but then ended up here. That's all people see. Yeah. They don't notice that was actually part of the process that got him there.
Yeah.
I feel like as a Muslim, if you really take on board the religion and you take on board entrepreneurship, it goes hand in hand in the sense that, because if you're like a non-Muslim and you're doing entrepreneurship, you don't make it, it's all B-end and all end of everything, because you only see this world as take everything you can get.
Zero sum.
Yeah. Exactly. And so as a Muslim, with me, it's like do something you're passionate about, because end of the day, we know our real purpose in this life. So you died living on the street, who cares, right? At least, you tried your best providing your family or tried doing what you needed to do, and we have rewards in the afterlife. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I see it in that way, that it actually goes hand in hand. People don't realize that, because you see all that, like, it's funny, Dr. Gil and me were having a chat about, you mentioned the famous blogger. I think he mentioned that guy as well. What was his name, sorry?
Casey Neistat?
I think, he was like, he gyms at like 1 p.m. at 1 a.m. in the night.
In the morning,
Yeah, so he's like non-Muslim, he's hustling 50 times harder than what Muslims do, you know what I mean? And it's crazy. It's like, because they see as this kind of life, just success and everything, because that's all they kind of want out of it. So I think there's untapped potential out there in terms of Muslims endeavoring, in entrepreneurship.
Those success stories like, oh, what is your 3 a.m.? There's like Kobe Bryant's and all that. What's that? It's like wake up for Fajr. That's when the most productive time is for us. That's when we hear the adhan, hayya salah, hayya falah. Here, come to success, come to prayer. That's when it sets the tone for your entire day, for example. And then you have that period between, when Fajr finishes and when the sun rises, you have that time to kind of plan your day, find out what your purpose in life is, and you can develop that.
Like, all the foundations are laid up.
We have all the resources.
It's crazy, right? It goes, because every time you see all these entrepreneurs, because I have a business mentor as well, and it was so funny. I had to sit down with him, and I had a long talk about, just consciousness, rationality and stuff like a deep kind of intellectual conversation. Yeah. But I also asked him, how do you go about your day? Because he's not Muslim, but everything that he goes about his day, it's like I already do anyway without minus, with the religion. Yeah. Like he wakes up 4 or 5 a.m., does meditation. It's like I'm praying at that time. It's crazy, right? Yeah. How all the entrepreneurs, as it is, they kind of hustle in the Muslim way, but as Muslims, we have to do it as a normal thing anyway.
So the best thing about us is that, it's directed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's where the reward really comes from. But for them, like, they just think getting the material wealth, the material success is the success. Yeah. For us, it's just a means to a greater good. Yeah, inshallah.
I'm glad that the episode turned to the religious side, because I've actually got a few points that I wanted to touch on, and I think this is a perfect opportunity to mention that when it comes to this. There's actually a lot of things to talk about in that sense. But first one, on the points that you were mentioning, what you were mentioning, Tanzim, was the focus of what we do. A lot of people see it as so a lot of the non-Muslims are already doing it, like how you said, but then the Muslims should be doing it naturally because of our religion. Yeah. But when it comes to entrepreneurship, I think actually putting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into what you are doing and making a purpose. Like, I could be building a business that sells t-shirts, but at the end of the day, if I can put my intention, I can actually correct my intention for what I'm doing, for an actual cause for the deen in some way, it gives you more of a purpose. And at the end of the day, even if your venture fails, it wasn't the venture that failed. It was more of what you were doing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that failed, but you still end up getting the hasanat. Like, we know that when we suffer in this dunya, even when we're trying, we still get the hasanat for that. And so then the failure it's not so much of a problem. Like, an example that I have would be, if you are working on something, like, even if the intention is, say, t-shirts, if you can't think of any way that this could benefit the ummah in some sort, just being able to raise money from it and then being able to donate. Like, this can be, for example, if a common trend like fidget spinners. If I put a fidget spinner on a t-shirt, it's going to make millions. But having the intention that, because if I do that, I'll have a lot more money to donate to the community. Yeah. That kind of puts you in a good perspective that you're never really failing. Yeah. And that puts a lot of people forward as well. But then the second thing I wanted to touch on is a lot of the negative connotations that people have towards entrepreneurship because of the religion. And so I've gotten a lot of the connotation that it's it's a dunya career.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's
Right.
and if you're doing that, then you're solely invested in the dunya. Whereas if you take on that perspective that I mentioned before, you could be doing so much more than just a dunya activity.
Yeah.
But then you compare that, like, what is the difference between that and medicine? They say because you're helping people, you're curing people.
Yeah.
But you could essentially be doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I could develop an application that ends up being used by those doctors in a positive way. Like there are endless possibilities.
That's one of that, like just bouncing off that. It's even the idea of, as I touched before, about normal work, places, you work at KPMG or whatever. It's already the non-Muslim work environment. So if you happen to start an app or business that goes big, you'll facilitate from a Muslim kind of environment because you're already the head, right? Yeah. And you're actually helping out so many 100,000 Muslims, making their life so much easier because they're able to facilitate a Muslim. Like you can let them, all right, 10-minute break for Dhuhr or Asr or whatever, right? And these things actually, the Ummah is in strife for living in the Western world because, some workplaces actually don't tell you to pray. So in different ways, you're actually benefiting the Ummah by doing all this entrepreneurship stuff where there is a big, bad perception to it. So
the perception needs to change, and I feel like the only way is to us have a counter media presence, like us having like really strong personal branded Muslims out there, and like our own media.
Like a lot of the entrepreneurs in our community own their own businesses, but no one knows about it. It's like, the normal businesses that we have, like selling products, or like you have a lot of people that have hijab stores, things like that. They're making the money as an entrepreneurial company, but that could be, I think that has a lot of potential to be used as a media, used in the media to encourage more Muslims to do things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've even touching on that. I've heard stories because I use Instagram quite a bit, and a lot of there's a lot of Muslim models who actually started their own agencies and they became big, like Hijabi House, all that stuff. These are like basic entrepreneurs and they made it big, but we don't hear about them. We just know as that store you go to buy hijabs, but the background story to it is actually like pretty impressive.
But I would say they don't get that exposure because the idea is just out there. It's not like in your face. Like, for example, I want to give you an idea that's really in your face. Do you guys know who Muhammad Faris is?
No,
I don't think
so. He's he runs this company called Productive Muslim.
Oh, okay.
So that guy, so he's talking about barakah in your life.
Yeah.
So he is doing such an amazing job, and he gets recognized because he's captured this monopoly of Muslim productivity. Like, how do you do what the non-Muslims are doing, but gain the ajr, gain the rewards that Muslims should be getting, right? Like, he's done that, and he's like released like YouTube videos and done conferences. He's even recently gone to an international like summit, and he talked to non-Muslims about barakah, and they actually took it really well. Like, they were like, "Oh, this is amazing stuff." So that's the reason I felt the hijabi entrepreneurs, the clothing lines, because there's a lot of clothing options out there. But those kinds of ideas, when you're solely talking about a concept about putting barakah in your life, that is where we stand out. That's where we need to stand out. I feel like the idea needs to be really strong for people to get on board with it.
I know one of the guys that owns one of those hijabi stores. I think, like what you were saying, it's on face value. When you go on Instagram, you just see it as like that store exists. They're selling they sell clothing, and that's it. It's a business. But I know like a bit of the backstory and how much effort went into building that business is unseen. No one sees that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And he's still expanding the business while people just see it as, it's there and it exists and it's growing by itself. Exactly. But there's so much behind closed doors that is happening as to, okay, what are the new trends? What are the ways that we can bring in new modest wear? Like, you got to think about that and aligning your personal ideas and your views with what you're building and being able to maintain that. It's so much effort, but people don't see that. And so I think that contributes to the negative stigma.
That comes back to Islamically how, we're taught that we have to put in the hustle in order to get what we need out of it, but ultimately Allah controls the result.
Definitely.
And that's basically I've learned through my mentorship as well, through people like I was able to spend a day with Dr. Gilad and stuff, so he was able to instill that in me, that you do as much as you can. And that's another extra benefit as us Muslims going into entrepreneurship. We know Allah controls the result. And so what do you have there to lose? You know what I mean?
You're essentially a means anyway. You're a means for those actions that are being performed.
Yeah.
And so like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need us doing this. Exactly. But it's also, you got to think about the other way, that first of all, we need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for whatever we're doing, even like all of that passion, the hard work and whatnot. But also knowing that that failure isn't, first of all, it's not from yourself, but it's also something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wrote.
Yeah.
And then that also contributes to, first of all, taking the failure with a light heart and then continuing on, bouncing back even more. But then also knowing that, like I said before, you're being rewarded for it, so continue with that.
So touching on if it's a feasible thing in terms of, career thing, because at the end of the day, there is that level of uncertainty that we talked about, comparing it to doing a degree and getting a job. So do you think for the majority people that it is a better way in sense of helping your family and, earning a certain amount of money straight away when you get out of uni to do a degree and go down that line, or to pursue entrepreneurship?
I think if you're really invested in an academia, if you really love something in an academic field, like medicine or things like that, I would go all in on that, all in on a degree. But when you're in that position, you have a lot of leeway. So I would do something on the side. Find a way that you can contribute in another way. Like I say, you said you might want to talk about the conference later, but when I was at the conference in America, so just a quick background, I was invited to Apple's developer conference where they talk about their new technology. And when I was there, I expected that it would be all developers and app developers just working on producing apps. After speaking with a couple people and some networking, I found out that one of the guys I was talking to was an optometrist.
Okay.
And he was at a developer conference. And after I spoke with him, I was asking him, you're an optometrist, why are you here? He said, well, I've been an optometrist for a long period of my life, and I've been doing the exact same thing over and over and over. Like, nothing's changing, and I keep expecting people to bring in new technologies for me to operate with, for me to use that. But no one was doing it. So I took it upon myself to learn a new language, learn coding, and then I developed that product for myself. So you can always expand, but focus on more what you're interested in, and then also it comes down to your mentality, like we were talking before.
I feel like we need to have more of an awareness of what's around us. So for me, I didn't pursue entrepreneurship until last summer. But before that, I was kind of gearing towards that, years and years of experience. I was leaning towards that just because of what, for example, the story of the pharmacist, the optometrist, he noticed how the status quo needed to change, and he built up the momentum enough. He got enough examples in his mind to realize, okay, something needs to change. That awareness needs to be there around people. That's why, in a sense, you should have backup plans, because then you have, at least if you're working towards something that's your primary, at the same time you're kind of working a bit by bit on the other elements, other plans that you have in motion. So I feel like that awareness, coupled with the kind of the spark, to go about, okay, so something needs to change, I need to pursue entrepreneurship. I feel like those are the elements.
At the same time, I think there's an issue in terms of, I think maybe we haven't touched on it. A lot of situations, especially living in Australia, you see people coming overseas, the family sending him here, trying to get that quick cash or whatever.
Right.
What do you think in that situation? They can't just be a side hustling entrepreneur. They might have to stick to that certain 9-to-5 job just to get that money. Like, do you think, what do you do?
Is this like coming on like a work visa or something like that?
Yeah, it could be anything, or just studying.
Similar circumstances to what international students are facing.
Basically international students. So in that kind of scenario,
in a foreign environment,
what would you do? Can you pursue your entrepreneurship kind of passion on the side, or do you have to just scrap that, look out for the family, and just get that side job and whatever?
What do you think, Tanzim?
I think whatever is good in the moment, you'd have to pursue, especially in a situation where you're with your family and you can't just be like, hey, but there's this thing I can do on the passion, just wait 4 or 5 years to kind of work and hustle, and you'll come, just trust me. But you can't control that, right? So I guess maybe in that certain situation, you'd have to work that 9-to-5. But if you're really about the hustle, like you said, the people that wake up 4 a.m., sleep at 12, if they can somehow manage something on the side, that passion, maybe it's feasible. But I don't know. It's kind of a interesting kind of topic. But what do you think, Mazen?
You need self-awareness. Like, you need to know your situation. Like what you said, depends on what situation you're in. If you can't, it's not feasible for you to hustle on the side and do a side job because you need to provide for your family. You need to work that 9-to-5.
Yeah.
Then you should stick with that for as long as possible. But also the self-awareness is knowing that you're not just affecting yourself in that scenario. Like for me, if I was to now to drop out of uni and just hustle, I'm 20. Like, I consider myself very young. And so I have a lot of time on me. Like, I'm not married, I don't have kids, I don't have anything no responsibilities in that sense. And so if I was to fail, no one's really relying on me to provide for them. You know, for my parents are still working, so they're not relying on me either. My sister's got her own job, things like that. But if I had a family or something like that, I would have to know or be aware of the consequences that would fall on other people. And it's not on them to have to suffer because I want to do something like that.
Yeah, that was basically well summed up. I just awareness of the situation, I guess.
Which is good. And then that builds on knowing what the industries are like on a macroeconomic level. Like, for example, the tech industry, it's been predicted now because of the advent of cybersecurity and all these other technologies that are happening, that the tech boom is going to continue for decades. Like, we're going to see much more job creation, but also, like, you know, interlinked jobs that haven't been thought about in the past. So I feel like knowing your industries, like, what are the future predictions?
In tech specifically?
Tech specifically, I mean, that's just a given because everything has just exploded for us in tech. We've already realized what the potential is, and people are just kind of latching onto that right now. But I mean, for other industries, it may not be as much, right?
Well, it's in the tech industry that entrepreneurship is growing the most.
Yeah.
And that's because you can be self-taught in the tech industry. Like I'm a self-taught app developer. No one taught me to develop apps. I learned it myself. And I'm a self-taught video editor. So I edit all my YouTube videos. I learned that myself. And so I could basically build an entire business myself without any relying on anything else.
You can access lynda.com courses.
Udemy is what
Udemy, and they're all free. I'm guessing Udemy would be free.
I paid, but like when I look at it, I paid $50 for one whole course that taught me to develop apps. Since then, I've made back over 10 times that amount.
That's a crazy investment.
You know? So
we have all these resources, especially with students. We get free access to all these
Lynda
libraries.
Is free, I think, for students.
But do you feel like is the tech industry and IT industry kind of intertwined in that sense? Because I know the people who I've heard, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the people who actually work in the IT industry where they're doing the 9 to 5 or whatever, it's very saturated in the sense that it's low pay, even though there's a lot of people that have the skill set to do it. Is that true, you reckon?
It depends on the specific function.
Yeah, it does. And a lot of companies are, well, now they're starting to pay more to developers that are working there, mainly because they're seeing a lot of them run out to do their own ventures. It's kind of like to keep them in. But there are some that are in a region or in a space where the workers are not aware of the possibilities, that try and milk that out of their employees.
Which is fair enough, yeah.
So they they've got more, I wouldn't say low paying, but lower than most other people. Whereas now the tech industry started when I first got into my degree. I was looking at a base rate for software engineers as 35 grand. And that's what I looked at now. Now the base rate is standing at like 75 grand between like 3 years from when I started uni to now.
I think the expectation has kind of risen a little bit as well, because now you are expected to have more software languages in your arsenal.
Yes, definitely.
I think
because of the fact that it's easy to teach yourself. They expect you to go out and do your own thing.
Fair enough, yeah.
Whereas it was harder to access resources back then. And so it was whatever you learn at university that was like, that's what you had.
So that 75k they pay you now is basically to keep you working for them and not go out and do your own thing. And
pretty much.
Just touching, we probably haven't touched on this for too long, but we want to know you in particular, like, because we've talked about general kind of topics, but your kind of passions and what you're doing is because I think maybe some of the viewers, they're not too familiar with this stuff, but talking about your entrepreneurship, but you make apps in particular, right? And you mentioned just then, like, it was all self-taught and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So do you have any specific apps that you're passionate about that you've created that we might know, or any insights, some stuff?
No, none that I've created. I mean, I made some apps. Well, I think the development of the apps that I made was the biggest learning experience for me. Rather than learning the course that taught me app development. So when I found, like I said, I was working on PowerPoint presentations and I was creating other things. When I found the love for app development, was I had an iPod Touch when I was in year 7, and I saw like so many small games and little quizzes and things like that. That so many people were playing with. And I was like, I'll develop an app like that. I'll try it. And for that, I needed a Mac. I bought my first Mac laptop then. When I first started developing, I found it too difficult. I deleted the entire software off my laptop, and then I was like, I'm never doing this again. I came back 6 months later and did the same. This happened like 3 or 4 times until I was like, no, that's it. I want to make a difference rather than, I'm not just going to make an app. I saw the potential as I went along. And so that's when I started developing properly. But on the apps that I've developed, there's one specifically, it was called Medic. that won me a scholarship in 2016.
Oh, cool.
2016, yeah, 2016. So that one won me the scholarship to the Apple conference in 2016. But that basically was, it was an app that locates your medical GPs in any country. So if you open the app, it just finds them near you. Whereas I found it difficult sometimes when I went overseas and I tried to type it on maps. It was a bit difficult. So I was like, oh, I found that gap and I thought I'd jump onto that.
I'm guessing also the what's it called, updating the directories in each of the countries would have been a challenge as well.
Yeah, of course. But Apple provides some APIs, which is basically like for the non-tech people that want to know what that is. It's kind of like a set of tools that they give to us to, like, for example, the Maps app on the iPhone. They give that to us, and all of the background things that they use to locate places, they give access to developers to use that in their own apps.
So is it open source, basically?
Yeah. For those that would know, it's called open source if you can use their tools. And they gave that ability to use the maps. And then what I did was I got, like, for example, the word medical center or doctor, and I translated that in over 50 languages, which I think encapsulated most countries. And then I broke down all of the countries and what languages they use.
Yeah.
And so whatever country you're in figures that out, maps it to your language, and then
that's so cool.
That is actually
like
awesome.
That reflects on one of the videos I watched Gary talk about finding your kind of thing to pursue your interest in terms of entrepreneurship is not just look hard for an idea, let the idea come to you. And then pursue it and see that gap. And so you saw that gap in maps and whatnot, and you pursued that. I think that's an idea. That's perfect in the sense that that's how you should. If you see something, pursue it, and you can see if you can correct it.
If you see a gap somewhere, you let it reflect upon that, and then you can allow an idea to build out.
Like, I would definitely not force an idea. Definitely don't force an idea. It'll flop miserably, honestly.
Exactly. Like it's more natural, organic if you just let it come to you, and then you realize that what you can do to kind of fix that.
But I feel like the urgency comes because there's people that think that money's just there. Like, you want to put your idea out there so you can retain as much money out there, but that's not really the case, is it? Like, it takes time.
You've got to think a lot into the idea. Like, each idea takes a lot of thinking, and what you think might be a massive necessity in society might not be wanted by anyone. You need to assess that, and because I might think that everyone wants an app that brings food to my house, delivery, because I'm just a lazy person. And then I just think everyone wants. Everyone's lazy like me, but maybe they're not. And once you kind of assess that, people might say, no, we don't want that. That's not an idea, and you may have invested so much time into that idea before you actually gauged your audience, and that's a lot of things that people go through, and they consider that a failure. Whereas they could have prevented that earlier on.
Like through validation early on of the idea, and then getting people that are more knowledgeable in the field, more knowledgeable in the markets, to kind of just gauge that idea to build upon it.
Because that's the mistake people make is they get an idea, they tell their friends, but they forget the fact that you're shaped by your friends anyway. So all your friends have similar ideas.
They're pretty much all going to say.
So they're gonna be like, bro, it's the secret you should bro. Yeah. But you need to actually ask different people, demographics, and do your research and ask, people that are up there. You got to do this.
Like, I think you were talking about this, that you reached out to investors to validate your idea.
Well, mainly because investors have actually seen the various industries. They're there to invest in whatever. Like, if you think of an investor, their main goal is to make money, like, out of your idea. So when you give them an idea, they've seen tons. Like, they've seen some in the food industry, in the driving industry, and like all of those. And then you present them your idea after they've seen millions of ideas. First of all, you need to make sure that your idea stands out above theirs, above all the others that they've seen. And then how are you providing value to them first as an investor? They're going to assess your app or your idea so much more in detail than if you went and asked one of your friends.
Like the value proposition in the long run as well. I think that's something that a lot of people overlook. In the long run, like, how is it going to be feasible to maintain the value proposition?
Because we don't see that. Because,
we see the short term.
Tanzim said, you're around your friends. They think the same way that you do. And so they're going to say, yeah, you're right. This is a viral idea. But, like, you're not really getting that. It's basically like asking yourself again.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. But also, there's the other element of doing it out there in the marketing. So how much, because you have an idea and you might have got validation for it and you got people on board.
You want to build that
people
traction.
are like, cool. So how do you build that traction in the marketing? What's your kind of spin on that?
my strategy of marketing or how I would market, I mean, I've looked into a lot of different ways. Like there's like you may have heard of SEO and
like
boosting things.
Search engine optimization.
Yeah, so they're like points that rank you higher in Google search when someone searches up your business or whatever it is. But I mean, different strategies work for different people.
Yeah.
I find that that's more of a corporate way to do it. It's a strategy. It's kind of like the degree route of marketing. Like it's straightforward. Whereas you can take other options. I know there's a YouTuber that I watched, and her name was Sarah Dietschy. She's a tech YouTuber, and was one of the first female tech YouTubers that came up.
Sure.
And the way she propelled was insane. She went from 4,000 subscribers overnight to 90,000.
Yeah.
And now if you see that, you may have been like, oh, she did some crazy marketing. All she did was make a video about Casey Neistat, who had 7 million subscribers or 4 million subscribers, but in a way that he would recognize it and want to advertise it.
That is actually neat, because you see all these reaction videos of popular TV shows and how they react. They get all the views from people that are fans of the TV shows, for example, and then they just build their fan base from that.
Like her video was how to make videos like him. And a lot of people ask, so many people ask it. When I wanted to create a vlog on my YouTube channel, I typed in vlog like Casey Neistat. That's actually what I did. And so she jumped on that. Like it's knowing what your market wants to see.
Yeah, that's really important.
Like that's growth hacking at its finest. Knowing exactly what people want to see, jump on the trends. And she made a video, and apparently he made a video a couple of days later saying, I wanted to make this video to answer all of your questions, but this girl did it already. And then he linked everyone there. And so she boosted up from there. So many people happen like that. Grew so much.
This reminds me of, there was a technique that my business mentor taught me, and it was basically about the fact of marketing and making sure you get someone else to do the marketing for you. Like, for example, if you start up, so for example, I deal with cricket bats, cricket gear, right? And so what you have to essentially do is get a compliment to you. So someone that complements your business and get them to, and if they're already established, you get them promote you. So for example, clubs and cricket clubs and people sign up. You make a partnership with them where all the people that go there are like, this is the guy to get for the best cricket bats or whatever. And so all those customers actually end up going to you. So you've done, or you've pitched to the clubs.
Definitely.
They're doing the advertising for you. So there's like all these like methods and ways. And I guess it's really important as entrepreneurs to be aware of how to kind of facilitate for that.
In terms of marketing, I feel the best way to go about it is having a vision and broadcasting that vision to the influential people that are like-minded, that can be on board with the idea that you're doing, and you can set that.
It requires a lot of planning.
It does, but it's so rewarding as well. If you find the right type of people, the momentum just explodes with the idea.
Like you need to see what potential your like every industry has a different way to market.
Yeah.
Like you can't market like a cooking book the same way you would market a phone. It's completely different, and like you need to know who your audience is and the way you're going to gain traction. But like one example of marketing that I took, so I noticed a lot of people weren't coming to my YouTube channel. And so...
Which people were there? Did you know the specific demographics?
Well, I'm obviously targeting like people that are interested in watching tech, things like that. But I also want to target a broader audience.
Okay.
And I found that the only people that were watching were people that were interested in tech, whereas I wanted to make it a more like general page with a bit of a tech focus. And I was only getting video views from the people that I knew, people that I was advertising to on my Facebook page. But the way I drove traction, so I saw an opportunity, which was when I lined up for the iPhone. I lined up the previous year just for the sake of lining up. But it was a much shorter period. And I mean, advertising through other people, you need a lot of leverage. So when you were saying, Tanzim, advertising through people for cricket, advertising your cricket equipment, you need to have a reason for them to do that. And it's very difficult to give people a good reason to advertise for you. And like, what are they getting out of it? And so I was like, I can't get enough people in that sense, because all of the people involved in tech are very high up. It's either going to be a CEO or a very highly paid YouTuber. And so I said I have to do it myself. I found that opportunity with a lot of media, with the lining up for the Apple Store. And that's when I took to that as an option. And that went very well in terms of getting a lot of exposure. More people saw my channel. And there are different opportunities. You'll find it in your own industry. But this was one that I saw, like people on an iPhone, tech-related channel, jump on that. Whereas you can find a lot of different things.
So how much media was... Okay, so we to that point, we talk about the lining up. So you were aware beforehand that there was a lot of media present during all the basically releases of the new iPhones.
Yeah. Well, I lined up... I was third last year when I lined up. And the main observation that I saw was first got everything, third got nothing.
Oh, really?
And that was what made me line up 10 days in advance. I said to myself, like, for months, I planned this for months. Like, people, like, I copped a lot of hate comments on my channel. And
saw the YouTube
like,
comments. Yeah, oh my goodness. Like, cancerous.
Like, you guys might want to look at the comments and enjoy. But it's funny reading through them because so many people were like, oh, this is so unproductive. What a waste of 10 days. And what,
wow, man.
He's just doing this for a phone. But if you actually look into what went into that, like, I planned for months, like, at least 3 months planning this lineup. And so when I planned it, I noticed... Like I said, first got all the attention.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, I'm going to make sure no matter what happens, I'm going to be first. I don't care if I have to line up a month in advance. And so I actually assessed it. And going back to a lot of my planning, I actually went to the Apple store a few weeks before I lined up. I spoke with some of the Apple workers. I gauged an idea of when the traffic started to pick up where I was lining up and when it started to die down. So when I could put up my tent and take it down. Like, it took a lot of planning, actually knowing how I'm going to line up.
That's crazy, man.
But it was all about, like I said earlier on in the episode, it's having that passion and knowing that you're going to do whatever it takes to make sure you achieve that goal. And then if it fails, it fails. That's up to the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I did whatever I could. Like, my mum told me, she was like, if you line up and what if even after you go 10 days, you get there and then someone's there an hour before? I was like, that's nasib. You know, I did what I could. I went into so much effort. I can't really, like, I can't blame anything. I can't blame anyone. Like, I did what I could. You know what I mean?
But you know the comment that you wrote, one of the YouTubers or whatever, the haters, they were saying about you not having a productive, time there. But you set up everything so it is productive. Like, you were doing your work, you were doing.
It was very ironic. Like, that's why I would laugh at these.
Yeah, that's why you set up everything.
I was still doing my assignments in line. I was, Apple gave me access to their Wi-Fi and things like that. I still I even attended my classes, like my uni classes. I still went there. I made sure that I attended that. Even, like, for example, prayers, while I'm lining up, I had to know exactly where I was praying. Even Jummah prayer was the worst one to figure out where I was going to pray. Like, I didn't know there was a musalla nearby.
Oh, really?
There was one, like, not even a minute down the road. Yeah. I didn't know that until literally on Friday.
Oh.
I was literally clutching straws, I was like, does someone want to come? Do you guys want to come to a jama'ah? We'll pray there. Like, someone saw something out. Can someone take my spot? I'll get, like, a non-Muslim to line up so I can go. That was a lot of, like, so much goes into it. But then at the end of the day, you have to make sure that, like I said earlier, you know your views, you know what you have to do, and then you fit everything else around that.
That's it.
So that kind of marketing kind of ploy that you used in order to get the, it was basically for the media to kind of get that media exposure, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so how do you feel did that reap the rewards that you think that you got?
Considering my average video gets around 200 views initially, and then after that, it ended up with like 65,000 views.
Oof. Yo, damn.
I thought that was like...
And this was literally after
This was right after, like, literally on the day. And then over the 1 week, I gained, I think it was 1,000 subscribers over that period of time. And it was all organic, or people that wanted to see my content, which was a lot more beneficial than me paying for Facebook ads.
So I guess that's just evidence in itself. You just put the effort and you look for a kind of gap in the market. Be smart about it. Alhamdulillah, it will work out. Allah plans like the results, right?
Opens doors, inshallah, just based on your sincerity and your efforts. So, bro, I want to wrap things up by just asking you to reach out to the audience. Just give advice on how to, be an entrepreneur. If they're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, but they're not sure how to go about it, or they are being an entrepreneur right now, but they're struggling. What are the key advices that you would give to people?
So the first thing is, like, who it appeals to. What we spoke about before is, I think everyone can be an entrepreneur, but you need to know what it entails before you do it. And then if that's not you, then I would like, I think try it at once. Always, there's no reason not to, especially if you're in your 20s. You've got a lot of time. So just try it. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You move on to something else. But at least there's no sense of what if. But then also, like I said, when you go into it, even if you're going to try it, you can't just go in there and then say, oh, I tried it and it failed if you didn't really put in the effort. Because that's not a good indication of how well it went. So that's kind of the first thing as to who should do it. But then if you are going into it, I think some of the expectations is that, first of all, it's not going to be easy, but that's not to put anyone off. You need to know that it's not going to be like that. But then again, like nothing is easy anyway.
Yeah.
When it comes to studying a degree, that takes for me, that's more strenuous and tiring than the entrepreneurial scene because it's something that I don't enjoy, especially. And that's why I think it's more important to focus on that specifically. But then it takes a lot of work and effort, and you need to actually put in the hard work rather than expecting it to just happen by itself. And then all of the success stories that we see, you kind of need to know that that's the end product, but there was so much of the process that got them there. And focusing on the end product is going to waste so much of your time because depending on what your goal is, you might have an end product that will take 5 to 10 years to reach. And if you're only focusing on that, you're going to live that 5 to 10 years miserable until you reach that point. Whereas if you actually enjoy every step of the way and you enjoy the hustle, you work hard, you get up in the morning and you can't wait to get up so you can continue, then that 5 to 10 years is as enjoyable as that final point, if not more. Because one of the points that Gary's made when I've watched his videos is he's got a business that's worth over $150 million. But yet he still makes a claim. He says, I think that I've sabotaged a lot of my business subconsciously, intentionally, because I think that if I reach that end goal, it'll just become boring. And I think that if I reach that end goal, I have nothing else to work towards. And so for us, we know that we have, for example, in our religion, we have something to work towards, but it's not in this dunya. We don't get it now. And so you're always continuously working. It doesn't end. So we're all about the process. This is a non-Muslim thinking about the process rather than the end goal. If we thought about, for example, Jannah, it helps you get there, but it's not a good gauge because we don't have an idea of what it is. We don't have a physical, tangible idea of what it is. We just need to enjoy and work towards getting there. But then if we don't enjoy this world, if we don't work hard in this dunya, thinking that, we just wait till the akhirah, you won't actually get there at the end anyway. So it's knowing that this part, if, for example, in a business or in religion, but now we're talking about the business, knowing that the middle process is just as important, if not more important than the end goal.
That reminds me of this. Basically, people talk about enjoy the journey rather than the destination.
Yeah.
If, for example, someone climbed Mount Everest, they're not going to say, hey, yeah, I got to top of Mount Everest. They'll be talking about, look, during the whole journey, I fell over and this happened. I had to chop my arm off.
Checkpoint, the specific checkpoint.
Extreme.
Or whatever, basically,
I'm not climbing Everest anymore.
But basically, you'll be talking more about the struggles and the hustles, you know what I mean? Instead of the actual point of, destinations.
Yeah, the good stories come from the processes, right?
Why is there a negative connotation of working hard?
Because it's this instant gratification that's been, in our generation particularly.
But what is the gratification? Getting what I want, but see, we keep wanting the end. Why do we want that end and not the process? Is that not enjoyable in itself?
People are miserable, bro. I think that's just it. They just want something to be happy about.
I think maybe it also touches on people want to show off something to another person. It becomes about the society, materialism.
Well. You know what? That is true. That was one of the things that I wanted to do when I first started. And I think that's why I thought it was going to be real quick. I wanted to show that I have 1 million subscribers. I wanted to show that I had a business that was huge. But at the end of the day, you don't really get much out of that other than if you need the fame to boost your business, which is what I'm working towards
and
now.
And what Gary Vee needed.
Yeah, well, if you look at the way I'm trying to build fame now to boost my business as opposed to how I was trying to build fame before to boast about it, it's a lot, it's completely different. Because there you think it's easy, it's going to come quick. I just got to put out viral content and everyone's going to watch it. Whereas here, it takes a lot of planning and processing, different stages.
Yeah. Awesome. Look, Jazak Khairan for spending the time for us, Maz. Really learned a lot about, entrepreneurship with you, and hope the listeners have done as well.
Inshallah.
All the very best with your studies and your future projects. Bro, we'd love to have you in future collaborations, so you're welcome anytime.
Jazakallah khairan, definitely.
For our listeners out there, thank you for giving us your attention. If you have any questions or comments, please reach us at boysinthecave@gmail.com, or you can find us on Facebook. Please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, as that greatly helps us. And so from our guest Mazen and Tanzim and myself, we wish you all the best. This is Aquib signing off. Assalamu alaikum.
وربطنا على قلوبهم إذ قاموا فقالوا ربنا رب السماوات والأرض لن ندعو من دونه إلها لقد قلنا إذا شططا هؤلاء قومنا اتخذوا من دونه آلهة لولا يأتون عليهم بسلطان بين فمن أظلم ممن افترى على الله كذبا